It's imaginary, man, don't you know? Your life is worth more than this. Catch me if you fall, catch me if you're low. You're low.
All right, hopefully it's working now. So I went and got the old setup from the other room, so I'm back to the podcaster mic and my acoustic, which is so out of tune right now. But I figured out how to get the Ethernet cable working, so it seems like the connection is stable. But then when I just started this stream, for some reason the camera froze. So tonight is like super duper plagued with inconsistencies, but I don't know, that's how it goes. We power through them. Every night there's some ridiculous thing. But at least I can see all the text. It's the right size. The moon is looking amazing right now. 5:43 p.m. Eastern. Edge of space. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for letting me know if you can hear this clearly. I checked on my other computer. It seems like it's okay. Rastaman lives. What's happening? And the Catch acoustic version. Hell yeah, I appreciate that. What's up, Illa Tiki? Welcome, Ola. What's up, Hans Koenig? Caramba, I thought there for a moment. Now, again, like it took me quite a few minutes to really get this working again, even though I prepped for a whole hour. It's always a thing. What's happening, John Pershing? My telescope arrived. Merry Christmas. That's awesome. Which one were you waiting for? I know you said there were a couple. I just don't know if I remember, actually. What's happening? TJ says, back, sound level balanced. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. So let's see what's going on. Let me tune my guitar, play a couple more tunes here from my SoundCloud page, and get to it. So tonight, it's going to be, I think, another hour of the moon. Looking on the 11-inch tonight, the CPC 11. It got much warmer here in Central Florida. Looking really nice. It's a 95 waxing gibbous. Got Aristarchus in view, Tycho prominent. A little bit of atmospheric turbulence, but way better than the other past couple of nights. I'm going to start streaming every night if I can, as long as the weather is clement. But it's been tough, gotta say, with the moon being at such a high arc. Like last night it was at 80 degrees above me. It was impossible to scope. It was also freezing. So, what else? What else we got? Also Orion tonight. So a little bit of Orion coming up after the moon. And then the full moon's going to be on the 29th. Same sort of setup, but hopefully I can play some electric guitar. I'm going to have to figure out what's going on here with the whole logic to this computer thing. Well, shout outs to Wilma. Yeah, sometimes you gotta lose the moon in cloudy skies. Oh, I also did something for y'all. I finally uploaded a new track, or a track that y'all have been asking for. So let me find that and link it in the chat. We got some will-powered. Finally mixed that properly and mastered it to whatever degree I'm gonna master it. And made an AIF of the file, made a silly cover, and we got some will-powered right here for y'all to pick up for yourselves. Right there. A couple more tunes before the new year. Let me know in the chat if you have a particular one that you would like me to upload and finish mastering. Otherwise, I'm going to probably do something like, do Sleepless Rider, probably do Electric Blood, might do, I don't know, a couple more. So let's get jamming tonight. Some different tunes. Reading and living.
Is it you I see there? just stranding away on the edge of my frequency. Your particles misbehave and breaking down finally. Your mind now has correlated the sequences inside of me. Push your eyes down through the looking glass spiders and open up your hole, rocking down that rabbit hole. Is it you I see there, high above the battle roar, morning waits for your goal. Is it you I see there?
All right. Little battle roar up in here. So zoomed in right now between Sea of Serenity and Sea of Tranquility, as well as off to the left we got Mare Imbrium. I guess there is some atmospheric turbulence. I thought it was much sharper, but I guess as it's moving through the different areas, it's going to get a bit blurry tonight. But let it resolve, and I'll double check that as well. But this is around where I think that lake is. That's what the title of this video is tonight. Lacus is Lacus. It's another word for lakes. But I guess the bigger areas are called mare, are called seas. And then you have Oceanus Procellarum or Procalarum, which is a big portion of the moon that contains Mare Imbrium, as well as several other regions. So seas, oceans, and I guess then there are lakes. We've actually seen a bunch before. This particular one, I only had a couple of moments to look up today. I saw it on somebody else's channel where they were looking up the blue lake on the moon, and I only saw it on my phone for a few moments, but I'm almost certain that it's around this region that we're looking at here. To the left, the Apennine mountain range. To the right, you got Sea of Tranquility and Sea of Serenity, and these kind of darkened portions. If I push up the color saturation on it, you'll see it pop a little more, but it's also still kind of bright out. But let's push the color. I didn't want to do that out of nowhere, but you can see now I'm just increasing saturation, so I'm not adding fake color. I'm just increasing how much color there actually is coming from the moon right now. Also tonight is the 11-inch CPC Celestron scope with my Sony a6 IV and a focal reducer and an extender tube right now. So this is the widest shot on the 11 in order to see the full surface of the moon at once. Let's see what's happening in the chat here. What's up, Lorraine? Lorraine d'Amour. What's happening and how we done? Australis. And Yalin Demerci. It doesn't look like ground. It's something else we don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, it could be, but it looks like stuff that we know pretty well. It actually looks like the surface of Earth from a distance to some degree, just devoid of really liquid water. But it definitely looks like rock or like something that's been like seashells or glass or asphalt, concrete. So many different things come to mind, but definitely I don't feel as confused about the moon as some people do. What's happening, Mr. Sexy Potato? Evening. Miguel Gonzalez, what's going on? Astralis says, I checked out some electric playlists and info last night. Legit. Awesome. That's great to hear. I don't know, did you check my playlist or just other Electric Universe stuff? Because either way, hey there, Debbie Carson. Evening. Either way, Electric Universe stuff is one of those things that is just constantly validating our existence, our connection to everything, It is constantly reinforcing physical parameters in relation to abstract concepts. And it's just one of those things that is just undeniable at this point. And a lot of people are tearing their hair out, trying to dissuade people from checking out Electric Universe. But the people who know, and the people who are going to figure it out will eventually see enough crap that they'll see like, wow, Electric Universe actually has some merit to it. These forms are not just random, they actually make sense. Quick other note is that Andrew Hall is finishing up his entire electric geology series on Thunderbolts Project, and I find it fascinating as to how he's talking now about how electricity under subsurface currents under the Earth are actually the way the Earth thinks. I don't know if y'all watched the last couple of videos, but he doesn't really elaborate on it, but it's sort of what I've been hinting at in terms of how electricity is not just how things are powered, but also how consciousness actually operates, from a planetary size to a human size to a particle size, etc. Oh, John Pershing, you got that scope, 76 millimeter, 700 millimeter. Wow. First one. That's a good one, though. What make did you get? Did you get an Explore Scientific or Celestron? Either way, still great to get a scope, regardless of what size. Anything is really better than nothing. Yeah, 2K is well worth it. What's up, Indomitable? Indomitable. Universal Truth. Oh, Universal One. There. Sorry, I can barely read with dark mode on. It's like just making up words here. Let's see. Yeah, Andrew on Thunderbolts, right? So he's talking about subsurface currents. He was talking about how the relationship between the weather patterns on Jupiter look like stuff on Earth. And that's also profound because it's sort of what I've been saying as well. Like, these electrical patterns exist. And it's not about what I said, really. It's not some ego trip. It's more about, like, so few people are actually saying this out loud that I'm always almost, like, stunned by the lack of discussion around this and how people already have a semblance of an answer, but they're not putting two and two together. So, for example, like, even though Andrew Hall's, like, nailing it on Thunderbolts, right? He's actually not. He doesn't reference Rupert Sheldrake. He doesn't reference Eileen McKusick. He doesn't reference Pierre-Marie Robitaille. He doesn't reference so many things. And I think it's important to reference those things because that's the way people can get a broader sense of the science that he's talking about and that he's postulating, right? Like, Rupert Sheldrake makes very clear how three-dimensional cymatic energy pinches is how consciousness and how memory and how senses occur in reality. Essentially, within plasma layers, we have these fractal, three-dimensional holographic, what we see as cymatic patterns that hold all life, all information about life, shape, culture, language, age, history, all of it. And we resonate with these cymatic patterns in order to know oneself. And a planet uses these same much larger cymatic patterns in space to know itself. So that's how Earth remembers itself, by reading its own signature within the ether around it. That's how cultures remember how to be their culture. That's how a body remembers how to stay the shape that it is, by having the information around it at all times. What's happening? See many crows. So yeah, please check out that Thunderbolts Project video. And then, just to comment one more thing, a comment stood out to me on Andrew Hall's video. And it was clearly somebody who thinks Electric Universe is valid and believes in it, but also was shit-talking Andrew Hall because... No, he was just shit-talking in general because Thunderbolts Project has slowed down. And then at the same time, he was also linking See the Pattern, Gareth's channel. And while Gareth's channel is amazing, See the Pattern, I mean, what is the point of antagonism within this community in terms of Thunderbolts Project sucks, so go watch, see the pattern, and forget it. But Andrew Hall's doing like really good work, and like a lot of Gareth's stuff is from Thunderbolts Project. Anyway, it's just that kind of close-minded approach to science that really is what is the obstacle today. Hey there, Ellie Wynn, what's happening? And the cats. American Life Videos H, what's happening? Welcome. All right, little break here, and I'll be back. Keep playing some tunes. What should I play? What should I play? Let's do Just Wanna Be There.
Thank you.
What's up, y'all? Alright, that was a little just want to be there. Hopping in the chat to say what's up to everybody. Again, let me just paste this link because I finally got willpowered out for y'all. Boom. Let's see. Eliwin says, just heard your last video from earlier tonight. The tune sounded re-engineered, more crisp. Actually, it was weird what was going on. There's something happening with the connection from the Mac to the PC. So you might have heard something a bit strange. Maybe I actually unlisted that video. It was only a few minutes long, and it was just like a total mess. Maybe, but actually recently I have been remastering and remixing some of these tracks, so that could be it as well. What's happening, synth porn? And what's happening, Genghis Khan? Thanks for checking out the song Willpowered. So it's the one I'm playing all along, but I just ran it through a mastering program today and exported an AIF high quality file and then posted it for y'all on the Bandcamp page. I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to upload a few more songs towards New Year's. So, and also let me know in the chat if there are ones that you really like that I haven't uploaded, and I'll make an effort to put those up. So just checking here, the moon, I tried to zoom in and get an even sharper shot, but I feel like this is what's going on tonight. It's like caught in an atmospheric ripple, and yeah, it's not as super sharp as I'd like, but I think it will get there in the next 30 minutes or so once it crosses this particular threshold. Moon looking wonderful, 95% illuminated. At the very top, Mare Crisium. Underneath that, Fecunditatis, Tranquillitatis, and Serenitatis. And then to the left, at the 9 o'clock, Mare Imbrium, Sinus Iridum, Plato crater. Underneath that, Copernicus, Aristarchus, and Kepler, and Oceanus Procellarum. At the 4 o'clock, we got Tycho, looking very prominent tonight. Underneath that, Schickard and Clavius. To the left of that, Humorum, Gassendi. Yeah, Kepler. Awesome, awesome visuals tonight. I mean, when does the moon really disappoint? So last night I was just sitting out on the porch watching it in real time with Mars. Again, it was like at 80 degrees altitude for me, like 78 or so. It was almost impossible to scope. I tried, but no dice. What's happening, Rebecca van Arsdal? How's it going? So right now, let's see, the moon is, where am I Stellarium at? I feel it's, what it is like when I scope from the 11, it's facing east directly. And it's also facing like a region where there are two different pockets that I'm pretty, that I see regularly basically. As soon as it rises, it has like intense turbulence, then there's a patch of clarity. And then right now it's roughly at, let's see what this is. Yeah, about 26 degrees, and it's far east right now. It's not. It hasn't even traversed the east point for me. So I feel like at like 30 odd degrees, it actually starts to get clear again. Let's see if I'm right about that. 6:10 on the clock. Edge of space. Let's do some more tunage here. Let's just play Willpowered in case y'all don't remember it. I'm sure you know it at this point. I also actually put out all the lyrics on that page that I just sent. So if you scroll down underneath Willpowered, they're mostly correct. Mostly correct lyrics. It's the correct number of ups and downs is what I tried to get to. So Willpowered, check it out. Thanks, y'all. Make sure you have 4K on and blasting it through some speakers.
You know I've been beaten from the heart. I know, no lie. I've been thinking about you all night. Why? No why. I've been waiting for your white light, no why. I've been thinking that you should be mine. So call me up, 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 tu me laisses parler. C'est pas malade, je t'attends, mon amour, reste tu es assis dans mon canapé cinéma, agitant la éternelle avec mon ensemble. Je suis la même que ton avant et chaque jour. Je t'attends, mon amour, avec les mecs sans agréver. Et c'est mon âme magnétique, c'est l'amour magnétique, c'est mon amour magnifique.
Alright, little Will powered over there. So, whipped out the sketch pad. What's up, Sheila Aliens? Are you an alien? Be careful. I'm just kidding. So silly. Man, I don't know. I'll tell you why I'm laughing, because it just triggered this thing. I don't know if any of y'all follow any cryptocurrency stuff at all, but there's like this crazy bot kind of plague that has infested crypto channel, or like cryptocurrency YouTube videos. So it's made up accounts that have full-on conversations with each other and recommend people to one another, and it's all bots. And so, sorry, Sheila Aliens, I didn't, I assume you're a real person because you misspelled cool. Not like on, not in a bad way, just. The only way to tell if they're real aliens or AI is that they don't use colloquialisms and slang and stuff like that. Hexabongs. Sorry, I'm just chuckling because I was reading all these different comments and I was like, wait, this is not real, right? And then other people have noticed it, but it's not enough people have really noticed how crazy it really is. So just watch out in the comment section. You never know if you're just talking to a straight up computer. They sound very real nowadays. But no offense, Sheila Aliens, welcome to the stream. Hope you're feeling good tonight. Let's I'll play some strut here real quick, but I just wanted to talk about Robo Sapiens. Let's talk about some of this geometry on the moon that I sketched. Right, so this is not just patterns. This is patterns, but inherent structure, geometry, side-by-side hexagons, side-by-side pentagons, creating the toroidal shape, a donut, or an infinity sign, with an hourglass or a hypotrochoid or a pinched tube superimposed on top of this, and that is what forms absolutely everything in our reality. This is where light gets light vibrates, matter coalesces, condenses along these pathways, and everything around it, dark matter, is what holds it in place, almost like the words to a page. So I know y'all have heard me say it many times, but when I heard Alan Watts phrase it this way, it made perfect sense to me. It's as if when you open a book, many people, or most people, just read the words, and they don't ever think about the white paper or whatever paper behind the words is. They're always just like, they look at the words, then they derive meaning from the words. But if you imagine that dark matter or counter space or ether or empty void is actually this inverted shape that holds all things that you see in place. I think it's just a completely different, flipped way of looking at it. It gives a whole new perspective on things. So, in that being said, let's talk a little bit just about all these features that I drew. On the left, it's Mare Imbrium. Up at the top middle, it's Serenity on the left and Tranquility on the right. And then to the right of that, it's Mare Fecunditatis, Mare Nectaris, and it's just recursive versions of these, what is really the eye socket, right? So if you look at yourself in the mirror, you'll see the same exact hexagon, symmetrical hexagons along the filament, which goes down the center of your head, nose, spinal column. And then your nostrils are two circles or spheres or hexagons, because they have boundary layers that are a pinched version of where your eyes would be. So humans and animals and all things are grown along Birkeland filaments along a symmetrical coaxial circuit. And this is why we look the way we do and why things are patterned and why we recognize ourselves in patterns and other things. It's not purely coincidental. Hopping in here, what's up, bro NATO? Benomaly, good to see you, brother. It's cool that it's this early to catch some people from across the pond. Who else do we got joining? Ian Kendall, what's happening, my man? Hans Koning says, I'm not AI. Yeah, sorry, whoever showed up and I questioned their AI-ness. Your AI-ness. Okay, let's look here for a moment. Exactly. Nectar, honeycomb, molecules, the shapes of eyes, the shapes of nebulas, galaxies, quasars, the shapes of rock, basalt, flats, like those nested hexagons, the hexagons that you find in language, right? A G or a C or any type of letter is made out of circles, lines, hexagons, ultimately. Bubbles in a sink, for example. Butterflies are grown along these same things. The abdomens of insects are grown along filamentary Birkeland filaments. Makes so much more sense than things are random and disconnected, that instead they're actually fully connected. So where I'm drawing the line right now, this is the dielectric inertial plane. So let's say this was your eye socket, right? Your eyeballs would grow along the dielectric inertial plane. You'd also see a recursive fractal of a human figure, right? Arms extended, stick man. And then underneath that, the Birkeland filament would continue. And then you'd have the shape of the nose almost draws itself out. Then you have two pinched rarefaction and compression, right? Rarefaction at the eyeballs, compression at the nostrils, and so on and so forth. If you draw onwards, you'll start realizing that our face is made up of hexagons and diamonds and pentagons along a Birkeland filament. And then the neck goes down, and that's where the spinal column is, right? Neck, and the shoulders are wide again, and you have circles that are rarefaction, spread out. Then further down, chest, compression, and the hips again, and it goes on, and this is how things exist, things grow along Birkeland filaments. Whether or not, I mean, what is an umbilical cord if not the actual Birkeland filament by which a human is grown, like a pea like a pea in a pod, like a pea pod. So why do craters on the moon or mare on the moon follow the same order? Why do quasars, and why do honeycomb, and why on and on and on? Why does this one pattern, actually, this side-by-side hexagon or torus, 2D torus, superimposed with a hypotrochoid or a pinched plasma tube? This is everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It's rife throughout all natural visuals. Let's see. Mr. Sexy Potato says, I have to know why religions adapted the Easter Bunny hiding eggs and its connection to the moon. I think it's really simple. Like, I think that humanity sees patterns in a lot of things. So the idea of fertility permeates all stories of astronomy, cosmology, religion. In fact, again, Alan Watts makes these great kind of analyses of religion, and he talks about how the whole point of religion is to tell people not to have sex. Why? Because they want people to have sex. So if you tell humanity don't do that, there's a much bigger likelihood that humanity will try and do that thing that you told them that they shouldn't do, which is the logical, which is the logical way of looking at government, institutional understanding and control, is a game of reverse psychology, where the powers that be set up structures by which the sheep trick themselves, as opposed to spending any effort on actively tricking the sheep. So I think religions adapted the Easter Bunny hiding eggs and its connection to the moon. So there's always been this idea of the cosmic egg, the color of the moon, the cracks on the moon, the origin of all things being an egg, really. I think there are a lot of threads, like some of the mythical archetypes seem to be remixed versions of a ton of different ideas all at once. So I don't think religion that we hear of or read about is very old at all, 2,000 to 3 to 5,000 years, let's say. And at that point, I could imagine that people thought they were living in crystal spheres, and when people saw, potentially saw these Birkeland filaments or giant lightning bolts in the sky, with stuff we see today. I mean, if you look up 4K, 8K storm chasers, you'll see that the stuff looks unbelievable. If you had no context, it would look terrifying and like a deity striking down upon you. So I really think that it's a mixed bag when it comes to like anthropomorphizing a story, adding animals and or people to tell the story of stars. Fertility is at the core of all esoterra, and then religion as we hear about it today has been so distorted and just it's such a mashup of different historical anecdotes versus really a coherent logical structure. For me, when I read all theology nowadays and I adhere to principles of cosmology and astronomy, it all makes way more sense. TJ, like telling a child that they can't do that thing, and what happens? Exactly, right? It seems much more logical in terms of a game of numbers, right? If you just tell 100 people not to do something, you're just going to get a whole bunch of them really, really wanting to do it. If you tell people, think about it, they do the opposite with space travel. They're like, oh, been to the moon, so boring, we've already been there, done that. And people are like, why do I want to do that? That's so boring. It's who cares about going to the moon? It's already been done. So it works in both ways. Rainbows and Butterflies, how's it going? Says, y'all talking about your kids. I got no kids, but I got my crewmates that have their kids. So I also want to show us M42 tonight in a little bit, once it gets a bit darker. It's just about sunset. Let's get back to a couple of tracks here. We'll do Kick in the Head.
There were times that I wished for someone like this. Would you stay? When I realized somehow I had fallen. Oh, there were ways. Oh, there were days that I remember. Oh, until you put it into my head. And I will see you with the bug, darling. Oh, and there were ways. 'Cause
above is like a kick in the head. Let's take a look at this. So I realize I have my images kind of ready to go. So this is an image of bubbles in a sink, right? What happens, bubbles are mostly water, but they've been tainted by some sort of solution. In this case, it's a little bit of soapy residue. But if you did pour over coffee, or if you boiled the surface of clay a little bit of with a bit of water in it, as Electric Universe eyes, or Billy Yelverton, or Electro Terravision, or any of the people who've done electric arc discharge in a laboratory. It's so important to look at this because this is exactly what's actually happening geologically. So obviously Andy Hall on Thunderbolts was talking about this sort of stuff, but he's there's just more to add, right? There's nothing wrong inherently with what he's saying. Everything he's saying is really on point. In fact, he actually showed the head of the anaconda that appears around. If you look at Google Earth right now, the 3D version, and you just spin it around from a certain distance, you'll see that basically there's an anaconda / python that wraps all the way around Earth. And it even looks like the head of an anaconda. It's so perfect that it can't be coincidence. And the reason I know now that it's actually correct is because snakes are grown along a Birkeland filament. Therefore, the snaking trail that surrounds Earth is also likely drawn or based around a Birkeland filament. So I'm just pulling up my paint program right here. I still got all that sketched out. Let me hide it. And I'll show you the correlation here, but it's pretty obvious, right? Everybody knows that bubbles are round, are spherical. Even, I mean, you know what I'm saying, right? Like there are bubbles and there are bubbles. So what's so interesting is bubbles start off, wait, that's not what I wanted. New. Oh, there we go. Yellow and larger. Bring that up a little bit. Right, so bubbles are spherical, right? If you blow a bubble in midair, it's almost a perfect circle or sphere. And then as it travels through air, it gets pushed and pulled by turbulence, so it kind of distorts. It's almost gets squashed and stretched. Okay, but what happens when bubbles hit surface tension? So that's what we have here, a picture of exactly that. And let me get, why is this not showing? 1 second. Ian Kendall says big hexagon on Saturn's pole. Same exact reason, because if you pour water from on Earth, there is this spiral to it. When you pee, when you pour coffee over, you'll see that the water itself has this kind of, I mean, they call it the Coriolis effect when it comes to aerodynamics, but it's a similar type of thing. There's a coaxial spin to almost every, I say almost, but again, everything on Earth spins. And so what's happening at the North Pole of Saturn and Jupiter and even Earth, I would bet that the aurorae look hexagonal, stretched hexagons to some degree. But let's look at this real quick. All right, there we go. Right, so bubbles, look at that. Hypotrochoid, pinched plasma tube. Right around it, two spheres that have now created boundary layers with the surrounding spheres. Therefore, they're almost hexagonal, right? You can even trace that kind of hexagon. But that's what we call, we assume is erosion, right? But it's actually more that these spheres were trying to push out with as much force as they had, or resonance. And then they meet dense layers and create boundary layers. What happens because the universe is malleable and moving and vibrating, it forms lattices, nested lattices. So why do we have a random picture of bubbles in a sink looking just like Sea of Serenity, Sea of Tranquility? Very simple question. Pose this to any astronomer, any YouTube channel, any Electric Universe channel, you name it. I'm not special, but I'm telling you, like, nobody talks about this, right? Like, I want to preface that because people are like, you're so arrogant sometimes. I'm like, that's fine, but nobody's asking this particular question, like, what's going on here? It's not coincidental. You also have, like, overlapping, right? Like, look above that. fecunditatis almost is like the same structure but kind of overlapping diamonds. And then the larger Sea of Tranquility and Mare Crisium we've seen so many times, but is very clearly hexagonal. It's got a pinch right there, Proclus. Hypotrochoid that way, hypotrochoid this way, hypotrochoid that way. So Birkeland filaments all across the moon. Not even bothering with the IR remote tonight, doing all of it manually. But yeah, molecules, honeycomb. Let's draw more. You can see it already, but along these bubbles, you have nested versions of the same exact thing. Not only do these look like eye sockets, but they also look like hips. They also look like honeycomb. They look like craters on the moon. And Mare, I think very importantly, the moon is fractally recursive. It's not just that you zoom in and some craters are hexagonal and some are side by side. No, literally they all are. From every size on the moon, you have this nested fractal resonance of this shape. It's plain and simple. So I want to say it's as clear as day. It's as clear as night. Howie Dunn says, NASA has a pretty fat budget. Why don't they ask? I don't know. I've discussed it many times. I feel like either NASA totally knows, and therefore if you know this, then you can do all these amazing or magical things to the rest of us, or to the human race, basically. It's pure magic, like anti-gravity, testing the limits of time travel, ectoplasm, ghosts, afterlife, you name it. Once you understand this type of information, then everything becomes possible. But at the same time, we've seen so many cases where industry is just plagued by trying to make money and become powerful. They don't have time to actually research anything. So I could tell them matter-of-factly I'm telling y'all what this is exactly. It's like giving away the answer it's spoiling the whole movie for y'all. It shouldn't, but ultimately it is, right? The true teaching of Zen is that once you're enlightened, you're not supposed to say you're enlightened. But who cares, right? We need to see this geometry correlated. So what else is happening? This is also how consciousness works. It's not just that this is how geology works. So there are surface currents, subsurface currents, and extra surface currents that surround the moon, for example, that lend themselves to creating these formations. And within the hexagon is the flower of life pattern. Right, so let me sketch a little more right here in the corner. So right here we've got the torus and we got the hypotrochoid. But if you looked at this same shape from the top, right, let's draw it from the top if you did a donut. Okay, this cross section is what you see over here. And then right in the center is if we're looking at it, you have this coaxial Birkeland filament that's twisting, that's spiraling. It's actually twisting and emanating spirals. And these emanating spirals is what I think look like the Fibonacci spiral that we all know and love and quote endlessly. So these spirals from the side look like this. And if you take it even one step further, it's rarefaction and compression spirals. When you look at it from the top, you get the Fibonacci spiral. When you look at it from the side, you get tetrahedrons or wave fronts. Buddy Dougherty has a great like visual representation of this with his work. I think the channel, what is it? Electric Geometry, the geometric view. So this is how language is formed, culture is formed, this is how connectivity is formed throughout reality. And yeah, what I was going to say is that there's this concept where at the very center of all particles and all energies, that this is how we perceive the elements. So along the Birkeland spiral is one origin that manifests itself as all the different elements of the periodic table along a Birkeland expansion. So like uranium 232, whatever, ends up here at the top of like an expanded spiral, and hydrogen starts over here. Similarly, you could also add harmonics to this, and you could say that each of these is a tone and or a series of tones or a chord, and then all of these together are symphonic or tonal or microtonal, depending on like which fractal scalar level you're looking at it at, or you're trying to deduce from. But the relativistic nature of it is such that this is the recursive geometry throughout all things. And anybody who says, debunk this, debunk that, ask them like why, for example, do bubbles, honeycomb, the eye sockets, lunar geology, on and on and on, the Cat's Eye Nebula, Orion, all look like this because the Big Bang is true, or because there's a really fundamental similar geometric shape that underlies everything. Much more logical. Let's see, I see some, what's up, George McCauley says Christian here. Ian Kendall says I'm Tibetan Buddhist myself. Buddhist. But I would argue that religion, whatever anybody wants to think about it in a metaphysical sense, is up to them. But if we look at theology and the stories of religion as historical, I think it would be remiss to look at them without the filter of saying, hey, were these scholars writing about comets, right? Were these priests talking about Saturn and Jupiter and Mars like the real object? Were the the wise men, were the kings, was Jesus references to a star or a comet or a celestial event? It changes a lot of things. I know how people are sensitive about that, but I feel like it really puts things into context. Noah, had two of everything, right? How he built an ark, you relate that to geometry, you relate that to symmetry, and you start to think, you're like, wait, are these stories about real people and magic, or was this about anthropomorphizing astronomy and cosmology to pass it on through the generations? And then if you look at all the fundamental physicists, the theoretical, well, I don't want to say they're theoretical physicists because that's a term that came to be in the 40s and 50s, but I think like Dirac and Maxwell and Tesla and people before the 50s, from like the 1800s to the early 1930s, 40s, 50s, it was a series of physicists who were really asking these types of questions. They were willing to toss out ideas, willing to rethink things. And I would even say Einstein, to some degree, I was reading some of his stuff, and he had thoughts about variable speed of light. He had thoughts about the ether. It's just who gets to rewrite and reframe history a certain way that's why we end up where we are today. Wise men, astrologers, could have been, but I feel like, think about it, like no TV, cable, radio, right? Like no electronic media, for example. Almost everybody must have been a star watcher. Much more exciting. You're watching like clouds and stars and meteor showers, much clearer skies. You're seeing the moon come up. It's exciting. Like we sit here today in 2021 almost watching the moon for 4 hours, no big deal. Super exciting. Imagine seeing that in a field with friends and like under like pristine sky conditions. So I feel like it's way more logical, way more reasonable to think that all of them, I'm talking about Atlantis to the Hindu stories of the celestial deities and the idea of the tree of the Yggdrasil and the Mayans. I need to kind of read up a little bit more on my Hindu stuff to say the right thing. But essentially, if you imagine that the deities used to live on these flower petals, these stacked flower petals, and on this level, there were these types of deities. On that level, there were this type. Looks like the Birkeland filament, right? Look, they're talking about the great conjunction of planets. It's so much more logical. and then the multi-headed beast, Shiva, the destroyer, on one, with the flailing arms, is very similar to the Medusa form with the flailing hair, and so on and so forth. These archetypes exist not because people were like, hey, I'm gonna do a meme on Medusa. No, people like really were affected by massive weather shifts and celestial happenings, and then wrote stories about them, for example. It's just how I think about it. See Many Crows says, how do you describe complicated ideas to simple minds, or children, for instance? The true origin of myths and biblical stories. So I think I'm trying to do it right here. I don't think any of y'all are simple. I think that, I used to think that there were aliens for sure. I used to think all the conspiracies were true. And today I think that a lot of the conspiracies are true. But I've replaced my entire time spent in my life that used to go into thinking about religion and philosophy, that used to go into thinking about conspiracies and aliens, that used to go into thinking about Illuminati and power structures, to now almost 90% of my day is thought about how things are interrelated, how bubbles work, how electricity works. Just the thought that the moon looks like your hands, just this idea of deducing information from the world around me using a simple set of tools is much more profound than any type of power structure, conspiracy, and whatnot. And much bigger than any god, right? Because we're using consumer level technology to look at an object that is astounding, and it's always there for us. It is a living, breathing deity, if you were to really put it into perspective. And it's funny because George Carlin said this years ago. He said, I don't believe in any like fake imaginary god. You know what I think? The sun. I worship the sun. And I can see it, first of all. I'm bastardizing his stand-up, but you know what I mean? Really, the sun is there, right? If anybody were to think about a deity that existed, it would be the sun and the moon. How do we live on a planet where people believe in a fully imaginary god that somehow is also male, and that somehow is also has the power to watch and see everybody at the same time, but also is really negligent in some instances, and so on and so forth. All the fallibility of man. However, what's interesting is much more so that we're all fallible. The moon is fallible. Everything exists as the same type of energy, and therefore electric universe equalizes the power and says, okay, there could be a godhead, but isn't it likely that you're also the godhead? Makes way more sense to me. Ian Kendall, you take it easy. If I'm not back, I'll catch you on another one, but enjoy your supper. Z-Proxy, what's happening, brother? Good evening. Good night. Oh, wait, what is it, 1 in the morning for you? Hope you're feeling good. See Many Crows says it was more of a rhetorical question. Well, I'm trying to just take cues and talk about it. Ben Amelie says something great, says morphic resonance, Rupert Sheldrake. Again, every show I've been mentioning Rupert Sheldrake, but if you haven't checked him out, he's been talking about morphogenetic field and telepathy and has done experiments on it for 30, 40 years. Used to hang out with Terrence McKenna and I want to say Abraham Zapruder, but not Abraham Zapruder, Abraham something. The three of them used to go out on tour and talk about DMT, mushrooms, all sorts of different things. But Rupert Sheldrake's still around, still talking about morphogenetic resonance. And his son, who is it? His son is, it's not Gandalf, Merlin. He has a son named Merlin, and they do three-dimensional holographic imagery of cymatic patterns. And you can see that this is a way that information would be stored in the ether, and this is also how we would resonate and focus in on these fractal patterns, and therefore be able to communicate with one another, telepathically or resonantly with our voices. What's happening, Morning Star Story? What's happening, Royal? So I wanted to talk a bit more about the telling people complicated ideas in a simple way. So I didn't want to make light of it because I think it's part of why science kind of sucks right now too, is because all these theoretical physicists who don't have all the answers spend a lot of time trying to create these kindergarten level stories for the public or for the press or for a soundbite in order to explain ideas that have not been tested or proven yet, for sure. Like, speed of light, like Einstein, like redshift, like Big Bang cosmology, like black holes. And I know a lot of people will hear this and say, what do you mean there are pictures and there's proof and you don't know what the heck you're talking about? Okay, fine. But if you really look into it, you'll realize that there are very valid debates about all these topics. And I think part of the dumbing down of physics has been due to the fact that people don't think that each other are smart enough. So I take that into account when I talk to y'all or when I do this show. I assume that everybody is capable of doing research. I assume that everybody who is listening to me has the wherewithal to ask me a follow-up question or to do even more research on what I'm talking about. And what else? Yeah, so I really try not to dumb down things too much, but I do try and elucidate and describe very clearly these geometries, the correlations. I feel like Ken Wheeler does that to some degree, but I also think it needs to be done even more gently. I don't think he's very gentle with his dissemination of the structure of our universe, so I try and fill in the gap where I'm willing to entertain any type of concept if it yields this fundamental understanding of why lunar, mare, and craters are hexagonal, not circular. Really simple thing. Ask anybody to talk about it, and you'll see where that conversation will end up. It'll either become an emotional cesspool, or you'll get a highly curious individual. There are a lot of things in between, but I haven't seen people talk about this. It's just a very rarefied thing. What's happening, Donald Yates? How you doing? C. Many Crow says, I look at the stories that were clearly catered to simpler minds as merely having survived in a Darwinian sense. The more complicated stories died out or simply follow the regression to the mean. I think so. I think there is a way to look at this through this geometry, and this, I mean by this, the idea of so many people being in the dark and only a few being enlightened. I think this correlation is actually based on the geometry as well. Hey there, Mary. Nice to see you. Halo. I think this geometry denotes this kind of maybe 80-20, 90-10 rule where cool restaurants, the coolest restaurant in your city, the fewest people know about. The coolest album, the fewest people know about. You know what I'm saying? Like, really the cool information, the interesting stuff, the rare information, the stuff that everybody's after is only for a small group of people. And the masses tend to do all the other things. And it's not that you don't want some of the people in the masses to wake up, so to speak, and to join the rarefied group. But I would say that I think you need, in a way, it's necessitative, it's like life and death, it goes hand in hand, for this stream to exist with no monetization and entertaining all the concepts and high quality content. I know I'm bragging about myself. Content like this exists in relation to 100 other YouTube channels that monetize it, clickbait, hyper edit, mostly drivel or regurgitated political jargon from space agencies. I think that's the only reason TakeBackSpace actually exists, not in order, but necessitatively relativistic to that paradigm. Same thing with the fancy restaurants, the really cool speakeasies. This is rarefied relational context. It can only be that in relation to 90% of people not getting it, which allows you to sniff out bullshit content. When you see bullshit science nowadays, if you just look at it from twofold, one from the geometry that I've shown on this channel, but I've seen in many places and is easily searchable, and then two, when they try and dumb down things too much, you know that they're bullshitting. They're trying to get everybody on board to buy the next chicken nugget. When you listen to Thunderbolts Project, it took me a while. I was like, damn, what are Stephen Crothers and Dr. Priyamari Robitaille are difficult to listen to. Not because they have bad voices or anything, it's just hard to change your mindset from listening to this drivel to people who actually respect your intelligence and talk to you on a level where they think that, if you've never heard of an equation, that you're going to go read a paper or that you're going to go figure out what they're talking about. They don't, and I love it. That's what people, I think, another reason people love Thunderbolts and Electric Universe, doesn't treat you like an idiot. And most channels from, honestly, 2 Minute Physics, Veritasium, Universe Today, Deep Sky, all these cats, they talk to you like you're an idiot. But these layers around Earth, the Van Allen radiation belts, you stupid people. Or did you know that all moon craters are circular? Let's look at why. Did you want to know 3 minutes after the Big Bang? All this type of, nobody cares about any of that. And then you read the comments, it's so fascinating. If you read comments under the big videos, the multi-million videos, it's all cult of personality. It's purely like, I love your, I love your hair in this video, and I love the graphics in this video. None of it is actually about the science. Nobody says a single damn thing about the science. It's all fluff. But you go to one of the Thunderbolts Project videos or Sky Scholar or See the Pattern, and at least half of them are people talking about formulas, logic, geometry. I mean, you name it, people are talking about it. I mean, there are people who have their own theories, which is why, I've talked about David D. Hilster and dissident science, and, I don't mean to hate on him. He loves talking about how let's throw out all the stuff and come up with all these new models of things. The only thing I'll take to it is just, there's a point where you have to decide on something. So it can't always be model after model after model. We have to decide, okay, what are these shapes? What are these shapes on the moon, right? They're hexagons, simple, plain and simple. I don't think there's anything left to deduce about it beyond the fact that look at these craters on the moon, hexagonal, what's going on? Same reason, I've talked about See the Pattern, right? Brilliant content, but when can we decide, okay, yes, NASA finally admitted that there's a Birkeland current in space, but that should open up all these other topics instead of just being about the fact that NASA, really the fluff, right, is that, oh my God, NASA talked about blah, blah, blah. Or, for any conspiracy, the government said blah, blah, blah. Versus, what are they talking about? What are they actually saying? So if NASA found a Birkeland filament in space and they have magnetic ropes, ooh, see that airplane? Crazy. That's coming up on your screen in a second. Really close-up aircraft passing through. Are you kidding me? No data? Are you kidding me? Excellent connection. I don't know if that was a Jake the Asshole impression, Z-Proxy. All right. What else was I talking about? So yeah, dumbing down of videos so to just tie it up all into a neat bundle. So I feel like as much as I rail on these topics and these channels that kind of talk to people like they're idiots, ultimately I think for Thunderbolts to exist and Billy Elverton and TakeBackSpace and See the Pattern to actually exist, I think you need the millions of people who buy into the BS narrative. Oddly. But that's, I think, what really... So it doesn't bother me anymore that millions of people watch these stupid videos or that I deem stupid. Other people can find them very fascinating, you know, if you fill a swimming pool up with spheres. But if they're not talking about hexagons on the moon, then I'm not listening. That was a plane for sure, yeah. All right, take a little break here, play some tunes, and then we'll take a look at Orion. You see the moon is kind of disappearing over the behind the windowsill. So I'm scoping from indoors today. 7 p.m. on the clock, East Coast. Rolling into our full moon in a few days. I think it's on the 29th. It's going to be 100% illuminated full moon, and it's going to be the same sort of shot. So I'm definitely going to sort out my guitar by then. Let's play some Dreamfields here. Back here. I adjusted the scope a little bit so we have a bit longer with the moon, but still, I feel like it'll be even sharper tomorrow. It's warming up. Thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out with me on yet another TakeBackSpace live stream. 5 years going strong, ups and downs, copyright strikes and all. Benomaly, thank you, bro. I appreciate that. Flyby confirmed. Very kind of you, seriously. All right, 7:05 p.m. Bit more moon here. What else can I talk about? Are there any regions that y'all want to see? I feel like maybe tomorrow we'll do more zoomed in shots. Right now it's still just a little too fuzzy to get that kind of sharpness. But still loving what we got. Derek, Mary, nice to see you. Let me see, what other shapes can I draw? There are definitely other sample images. Let me see. Let me see what's going on. Okay. Plasma formations. Here's my snow leopard shot. I love this shot. Because I used to look at it, I love nature shows, by the way. But when you see really how humans and animals are grown along filaments, man, it is mind-breaking. Let's pull up this image of this beautiful creature, the snow leopard. Let me also move the moon over, and let's look at what the snow leopard can teach us. I think you're seeing exactly what I'm talking about. It's sharp enough. I mean, the 11 has some really good detail on it, but like it could be even crispier. You know how we do. Trying to see my volume here. Hope it's okay. Okay, so we got our snow leopard, and immediately if you just look at the mouth of the snow leopard, you can see side-by-side hexagonal formations. You can see the shape of a butterfly and the nose. You can see rarefaction and compression. You see the eye sockets are side-by-side spheres, really. They're much rounder here, but they definitely make that kind of sharp boundary layer with the nose. What's happening, Sonic Jet? Let me put my paint program up here so I can sketch while I'm talking about this. Turn that yellow, put this on, okay. Okay, so spinal column, coaxial Birkeland filament. A head is grown like a seed, like a human along a filament. What happens? You get formations like this. Eye sockets, side-by-side hexagons. Mouth, side-by-side hexagons. It also looks like stickman. It also looks like a butterfly over here. Rarefaction, compression. Torus, hypotrochoid. Pinched plasma tube, right? Everything's along a tube. How is it similar to the moon? On the right, we got the moon, and you can see prominently middle top, Sea of Serenity, which I'm outlining, and then Sea of Tranquility, which I'm outlining. Looks just like the mouth of a snow leopard. It's the same thing. The jaw has that, we even say square jaw. So faces, humans, ears are formed along, right, a certain portion. They also outline the shape of a larger Birkeland filament. So here's the butterfly shape again. The same thing that's on the nose, the small one. It's the same outline, recursive fractally large. And then this is the shape we see on the moon. I mean, this is not pareidolia, well, even though it's called pareidolia and coincidental, right? People will say, oh, you just see things, you're seeing patterns. But there's a reason for this, right? There's a reason that humans, animals, abdomen, butterflies, and moon craters look like this. It's very simple. Because they're the same thing, not because people are just seeing. You're seeing things. I don't like it because you're seeing things and then you're giving an opinion. Every show I feel like I want to sit and read comments, stupid comments from other videos, and then I don't do it, thankfully. All right, so that was Snow Leopard. Let's look at what else I got. What's happening, Vicky? Nice to see you. Hope everybody's had a great holiday so far. I know it's still going, moving into the end of this insane year. All right, here's a hyperboloid or a hypotrochoid from the encyclopedia. Just let's quickly look at what this is visually. So that's when I say a pinched plasma tube, or a hypotrochoid, or a hyperboloid, or when Ken calls it a hyperboloid and a hypotrochoid, or fractal woman, they're talking about this shape. It's a pinched plasma tube. It could be a cylinder that is pinched, but really it's just denotated by this shape with a coaxial Birkeland filament going through its center. This is also representative of the Fibonacci spirals that I was saying earlier that are represented by tetrahedrons, inverted tetrahedrons. The oscillation, this is Maxwellian, where you have the two tetrahedrons from the hyperboloid that start to overlap in the center. This is where you get the Star of David, or the inverted Merkaba, or the Merkaba, the inverted tetrahedrons. If you've ever watched Thrive or any of the New Age stuff, this is the true, what I think is the true fundamentals of that. Okay. That's the hourglass shape, or the hyperboloid. Let's hide that. What other images do I have here to reinforce this point? Again, quickly, let's look at our bees. What's going on, bee? So bee, not only as the insect, right, looks like it was grown along a filament, its whole body is nested and like a peas in a pod, pinches and rarefactions at the abdomen and at the head, and the compound eye is fractally recursive to the actual nested hexagons of the hive, right? Think about how insane it is that each eye, that the bee itself grows, right? Nobody else weaves a bee's eyes, or no, your parents don't weave your skin, right? You're actually actively growing your body, and your body looks like these hexagonal nested lattices, right? Because everything is trying to be spherical, and everything that is spherical meets other spheres and nests and creates these nested fractals of hexagons. Nested fractal hexagons of crystal lattice geometry. But anyway, bees don't sniff magnetism. Bees are themselves magnetism. They're grown along these filaments, therefore hexagons are innately part of their formation, and so they make what they know. There's no honest answer out there for why bees make hexagons. If you go look it up, they will not relate it to craters, geology, larger scale ideas. It's very isolated to what people think about, particularly bees in general, and how they sniff magnetic field lines. It's very primitive. All right, so we got bees and hexagons. What else can we pull up here? I guess this image has a bunch of different things in it, but I can describe them. So this has pictures like from a ferrocell up at the top. And again, this is purely educational, not trying to profit off anybody else's work. Just put it out there. But yeah, so looking at this torus and hypotrochoid or hyperboloid from the top, you get this kind of flower of life pattern and essentially overlapping Fibonacci spirals. If you look at a ferrocell, what Ken Wheeler does, Fractal Woman, I have a video on a ferrocell, and basically what happens is you put a magnet in the center, and the magnet kind of forces some of the ferric fluid between the two glass pieces to coalesce and to to be impinged upon the magnetic field lines. So we basically see, again, the same way I draw these shapes on top of the moon, this magnet pulls out and induces a visual representation of the coaxial Birkeland setup, the torus and the hyperboloid, in three-dimensional ferric hologram. Same thing, a bunch of different versions of the ferrocell. Then you've got one of those cool kind of little plasma balls, like novelty toys, but also profound, right? Because structurally, this is a very good way to see how you have an anode and cathode setup, and how thunderbolts exist in nature, and how really it might have looked if the moon was being zapped or Mars was being zapped. It might look something like this from the outside. That's here and here. Here you've got some mythic symbology, all of which could be representative of early astronomers talking about electric universe. Here you've got the nested toruses, and I think there's a flat Earth thing here, but it's not really that. This is the dielectric inertial plane, right? But at the center of this is where Earth would be, right? So this, instead of it being flat Earth, this would be orbital. So this is where the moon is. And there wouldn't be all this mass. It would just be pinched here and rings around it like Saturn, or like, really Earth had rings, Jupiter has rings, very faint rings, Uranus, Neptune, all these planets have rings that are compressed matter along the dielectric inertial orbit. Everything else, counter space, all the people who don't know about the cool restaurants. The dielectric inertial plane, all the people who know about the cool restaurants. Structural here, hexagonal lattice structure with nested hyperboloid pinched tubes, and then orbital inertial plane. Same thing here. This looks a little bit like a magnified version of eggs, cell meiosis, mitosis. Same thing happens. Two spheres get trapped within a sphere, and they create elongated hexagons because they meet boundary layers and essentially oscillate within dense plasma and create their own Platonic geometric shapes. Finally, right here in the middle, this frame has the kind of connection that shows really the hyperboloid or the hourglass bringing down the Birkeland filament through into the middle of the dielectric inertial field and the toroidal magnetic currents. Vicky says, I wonder if there would be a way to measure the stars that are red shifted and stars that are blue shifted. Hide that. And see if they're in the shape of a hexagon, you know, like a honeycomb. See, that's one of those things that I don't know exactly how to do, but I would venture to say that I'm very certain that it would look that way. I feel like our Milky Way probably looks like a hexagon, or like an elongated, stretched hexagon spiral. And we are in a larger hyperboloid. In fact, what I was suggesting is maybe Orion is a cross-section. Like if you cut an arm or a leg and you look at a section of a limb halfway, it almost looks like the trapezium cluster surrounded by nebula. So in fact, it feels like you can really see the Birkeland filament that we're on, and that cuts right through the center of the Milky Way. It's not, I don't think it's hidden. I think it's right there. Just adjusting the scope here. Quick rabbit hole, I guess, if you want to talk about Planet X, Richard Garcia. True or false? So I think larger question is, are there rogue planets, asteroids, meteorites headed for Earth? Right? Something like that. Or will a comet come and smash into Earth? So there's that. Then there's Planet X being associated with Nibiru and the Nephilim and slavery, and a planet that has a large elliptical orbit that we don't see in our telescopes that might arrive in a certain period during a ritualistic phase and re-enslave humanity for gold. Which, hey, Bitcoin. But yeah, is Planet X real, right? Like, is there a planet that we don't see that is headed right for us, or a planet that carries a species that is somehow interacting with Earth that we don't know about? So all I can say is there's really no way to tell 100%, right? If there is a planetary civilization, there are telescopes and technology that we don't have access to as consumers, and therefore you could theoretically see things that we don't have privy to. Regardless, it could be right in plain sight. However, when it comes to the videos that show Planet X, Nibiru, Second Sun, Rahu, alien craft, I will say beyond a shadow of a doubt, from John Leonard Walson to you name it, to Bruce, to even my channel where I've captured things, I'm 99% certain it's human-made, that it's not alien from another civilization. I could be completely wrong about this, but I really feel like there's not a single channel on YouTube that says moon bases and UFOs and has real certainty behind that. It's a bold statement, but it's the same thing with astrologers, right? You can say I believe people, but can you really, really prove it? But whether I think Planet X is real or asteroid meteorite coming to Earth, I will say that I don't believe it's possible. I feel like the structure that we live on in this time and where the moon is at and the way things actually operate from a plasma standpoint, I don't think that things collide with things. I think that they exchange electrical interactions. If you've ever watched Laplacian primer fields or magnets, how magnets basically can, like little ball magnets, you can throw a bunch of them together and they'll start structuring themselves. They'll self-organizing lattices. So they'll come together, so there's attraction, but then they'll never touch, so repulsion. So you have systems that are inherent on Earth that are very simple to look at that both have attraction and repulsion. So I feel like asteroids, meteorites, this whole idea of impact has much less merit than things interacting and having like a static arc discharge between them, almost like our fingers with a door handle, or Valles Marineris, or Tycho crater, or Copernicus. I mean, you look at this on the moon, and you tell me that looks like impact versus persistent electric shock, right? That creates these blisters, and these blisters have hexagonal forms. They look like life. Makes way more sense to me. So Planet X is, I think, just a way to distract people from looking at what's obvious, which is the shape of lunar craters, the electrical nature of reality. There's so much to look at. See, again, it's the same thing with all conspiracies. Fun to look at, fun to think about, can scare you. It's like a horror movie, you get that adrenaline going. But if we're talking about science, pure, unadulterated science, there's so many topics that warrant investigation and time over Nibiru, Planet X, Flat Earth, you name it, government conspiracies at large, false flags, all of them. They don't register when it compares to looking at the surface of the moon, when it comes to looking at Saturn and its rings. You have access to this as a human being to see these things, these events, completely removed from this political jargon. And that, to me, is way more powerful, way more insightful, and worth more time. So I spend most of my time writing music and looking at ties between electricity and nature, right? Why do and I used to spend thousands of hours in ufology. Like, what is that ever going to yield? It's never going to yield anything except, ooh, maybe aliens one day, maybe they're going to come and do. But besides that, what have we ever gotten besides hype? Mary says, is there any land area on Earth that looks similar in composition as the moon? Yeah, there are many. If you just type in volcanoes from satellites and just look at it, and then look at Copernicus or Tycho, you'll see the similarities, the Silmarillions. you'll see the similarities. Diamonds, hexagons, nested hexagons. It's fully recursive. I don't mess with Earth geology because if you want to study that, Andrew Hall, Stephen A. Smith, Michael Steinbacher, and tons of people in the electric universe have very thoroughly related geology on all planetary asteroid meteorite bodies and Earth. Full correlations, makes perfect sense. I mean, you could even take something as simple as Schroeder's Valley inside Aristarchus and relate it to the Amazon, for example, or the Nile, a snaking cut into the surface of the Earth, right? Not impact related, right? There's no impact that hits something and creates a snaking canyon, right? Impacts create ballistic scars, and we have pictures of that. Electricity cuts through like a knife through butter, and that's what we see on the surface of Earth and planets. TJ says, isn't there a micro? No. There's a meteor crater in the States, which is pretty famous. So I used to think that, but if you look at that from space, satellite photo of meteor impacts on Earth, again, you'll see hexagons. You'll see more so what I'm talking about when it comes to lunar geology than you will to this idea that something that large hit the surface of the Earth. And mostly because this idea that these rocks coming from space that are on fire would absolutely annihilate Earth, even a very small one. This idea that it got hit with something that large and survived is miraculous. Same thing with the moon. Look at the size of these Imbrium craters. The moon, just by, let's say Tycho was an impact-related scar, Tycho would have annihilated the moon from top to bottom. There would be a chunk missing. Not a perfectly structured hexagon. It doesn't make any sense. Ballistic impact on the moon makes zero sense. Oh, Vicky, you were talking about the red and blue shift, right? So if the shape is correct according to science, would it go to reason that the stars that are redshifted are actually moving faster because they're following the current and at the farthest point? Right. So color is that we see is based on frequency, and frequency means rate of induction. And depending on where you are in that geometry that I show, either along the Birkeland filament, right, along the rarefaction and compression of the Birkeland current, we see a different color. And therefore redshift and blue shift would be associated with where stars are along this particular magnetic field coherence versus that they're fully like expanding into nothingness. Vicky says, new findings in 2003 revealed that the shape of the universe is a dodecahedron based on phi. Yeah, that was that guy, Garrett Lisi, who came up with this idea of the universe being a singular shape. It's so funny because, not funny, I mean it's because in him saying, or even string theory taking it to this place where like it's so simple, but here's all this crazy math and gibberish that goes along with it. When in fact, if he truly understood it outside of just math, then they would have done what I'm doing, which is superimpose this geometry on top of all things in nature, and then show the physical relationship of the two. Thrive came very close to that, where they showed the apple core around the human body, and they kind of started to make that correlation. And Nassim Haramein, who also, a lot of jargon, so much jargon, but Nassim Haramein essentially has arc crystal technology now, and he talks about how consciousness is outside the human body. There's still this element of fluff, right? There's still this element of, there's still more to discover, but there really isn't. There's more of like how to tie it all together. So, yeah. What's up, Charlie Silverman? Some beer, what happened? Some beer happened. Yeah, no, all good, all good. I'm losing the moon because it's I'm scoping from inside and it's hitting the windowsill. So once the moon splits, I'm going to show us some M42 with the 11 and then call it a night here. Early stream, but I'm going to be back tomorrow with the same scope, same time, same place. Mary says, in similar reflectivity as the moon. Well, I don't know if those features that we have on Earth would be the same, just due to the fact that the size of Earth, the density of the atmosphere, and the fact that the soil is actually still wet, right? So I don't think it would be the same as we see on the mare or the craters on the moon, but similar origin for sure. Donald Yates says volcanoes are plasma bubbles. I would say so, or vents, right? The entire planet got heated, almost like a zit, right? It forms a forms a volcano on your skin where something needs to be let out. It's kind of gross, but right? That's why you have all the little micro craters inside flat-floored craters on the moon. You have these little vent holes. And people think those are impact related. It makes no sense. Much more so that a bubble popped and that vent hole appeared. Same thing like when you're doing coffee or you're seeing bubbles in a sink. These bubbles appear seemingly out of nowhere. What's happening is that there's an oscillation within the ether, and that creates what we see as manifest material. But the material and the ether is constantly there. So it just needs to oscillate at the frequency of a bubble in order for us to see it. Yeah, no problem, Richard Garcia. I'm never tired when I kind of take a deep breath. It's just that some of these topics, like Planet X, right, are so deep. There are several threads to it, and I've definitely spent my time researching it, and you really end up kind of nowhere, right, versus Electric Universe, which gives you power, literally, figuratively, and metaphorically shows you how what we know and what we see is rooted along a Birkeland filament. Hell yeah. Let's rise up and let's see Orion for a little bit.
And I have this thing before me.
Visit the age, yo. So, love this shot of M42. So I zoomed in and I was waiting for it to get clear for a moment between the aberration, and then I snapped I think it was a 1.5 second exposure. And you can really see the nebular cloud here. As I was drawing it, I realized that it's at a particular angle, right? So the dielectric inertial field or dielectric inertial plane where trapezium is located is at somewhat of an angle to us, but you can very much see this boundary layer side by side spheres or hexagons, right down the center, the Birkeland filament, to the left, the Horsehead Nebula. If we really had incredibly dark skies, we could see that too. But this whole nebular cluster is essentially showing us that etheric dust and matter coalesces along Birkeland currents, and hence these magnetic field lines that we're seeing. So clear. This is what would supersede any type of discussion of conspiracy for me. Same thing, any type of video I were to make on space, if I were a large channel, right, like with 1 million subscribers, would be about, why does it look this way? Not, wow, how many frames did you stack? No, but like, why does it look like this? Why does it look like a bird with its wings outspread, right? Here, let me sketch that. But essentially a bird is grown along a Birkeland filament. That's why, not because we just see birds in things, but because birds look like us, look like stickmen, look like turtles, look like lizards, you name it. And furthermore, looking at this from the side, it looks like, you know, a statue with an erect piece of junk, and right at the tip of that is kind of a birthplace of stars, is what they call it. So recursive sexuality through through all astronomy and cosmology. And faces, of course, where the trapezium would occur is where an eyeball would occur in an eye socket, and the whole thing itself looks like a figurine or, you know, a lizard or a turtle from the top. Yeah, it looks like a 5-pointed star. Well, it's not just that, because like it's all of them, right? It's nested and recursive. But yes, you get the pentagonal shape as well as a hexagonal, kind of elongated hexagons. But I know y'all are seeing this now. Howie Dunn says it's not all about stacking frames, although, you know, of course it really is for certain things. But I feel like the conversation is tilted so much more to what telescope did you get and how many frames did you stack versus, okay, Cat's Eye Nebula, double helix nebula, what is it? I mean, M42, Horsehead, Trifid Nebula, any number of these. Put them side by side, put them next to an apple, put them next to Sea of Serenity and Sea of Tranquility. What's going on? It's like it's the same exact shape throughout, recursively. That is so much more important than other conspiracies. All right, so this is not the live shot. Like I said, this is a photo, but a 1 second exposure, which is kind of nuts. But if I just play with the settings a little bit, we can see more or less of the nebular cloud. On the left, you kind of see that's a bit of the Fibonacci spiral right around the left eye. Let me sketch that a little bit. Vicky says, always thought that the phoenix, like phoenix rising from the ashes, was derived from the Orion Nebula. I feel like birds in general are like the variety of birds and their shapes very much outline stuff we see in space constantly. Where is it? My paint. Here my paint. And you can kind of see the wings right here. Right? Something like this. That's sort of what I'm seeing with the beak. It's a really piss poor wing. Okay. That's even worse. All right, let me draw a little bit more detailed. It's even helping me. That would be the beak and the eyes. And then I think this is that kind of spiral that I was talking about right there. And the wingspan would go out that way, and that way. And like I said, it's a bit at an angle, so we're kind of getting this this shape here. Not great. It's not great. It's my hieroglyphics, 2020 hieroglyphics. But either way, like, I had no idea that you could see this structure with a budget scope. Like, you have this idea that it's so distant, far removed from humanity, but damn, you can see this like crazy. And my thought from earlier is a little bit like this is like a cross section, right? So if we followed this line, you can kind of see the angle. And then the trapezium cluster is almost like a diamond. It's got 4 stars, as I was zooming in earlier. It's like fractally nested cubes. I don't know, I see things, but anybody can do this type of work. Just take a picture of space, superimpose hexagons, and follow the lines. Follow the yellow brick lines. Quickly, just a reminder for anyone just showing up, I posted a new song to Bandcamp. That's the link. Willpowered is now available for picking up. You can name your price. You've heard it on this channel a bunch of times, but I just mastered it today and made it AIF high quality file, so you can download that. Hope you all enjoy Willpowered. I'll be posting some other songs as well in the next few days. All right, let me get back to the live shot, even though this is looking amazing. I'll give you all a second to take a screenshot of this if you'd like. And let's go with Sleepless Rider.
See
waiting. I think, did I already post that? Yeah, that track, if you like that last one, you can download this one I just played right there. All right, so let's talk about a couple of things, and then I'm going to wrap up this show. It went way longer than I expected, 2 hour 15 right here. 7:53 p.m. East Coast. Let's talk about some Electric Universe people and how they fit into the puzzle. So, of course, if you look at the description of my video, you'll see a lot of independent researchers like Kronos, like See the Pattern, like Pierre-Marie Robitaille, Electric Universe Eyes, so on and so forth. However, if we took, and of course, Thunderbolts Project, Billy Elverton, and others. But let's talk about how these other people who are not really referenced in the same breath really need to be. So first person I'm going to talk about is Eileen McCusick, McCusick, S-I-C-K, sorry, McCusick. So Eileen McCusick, I think she was on Crow's channel, but way prior to that, she's the one who has been doing research on using tuning forks to heal people. So Eileen McCusick has given Thunderbolts Project, the conferences. She's been to the Thunderbolts Project EU conferences and has spoken about the human biofield. What is the human biofield? I'm going to quickly do a nutshell here of what that is. So human biofield is head, arms, legs, and around the human body, you got these thin plasma shells that are physical, that are real. She talks about how this is where information of your life is stored. Every layer is a period of time, and when you want to resonate with that layer, I don't think she really talks about this necessarily, but the way I derived it is that you're talking about oscillating from within to a memory layer. So your birth, your middle life, your now, and more bubbles will form as you oscillate with these other bubbles. So that's Eileen McCusick. Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake talks about how people are coming home and you got a little dog waiting for them, and the dog gets an alert somehow that the owner is coming home. He's done research on this. He's done the same thing with Guess Who's Calling You, where they'll call you and you'll have to guess who it is before they patch you through. And then he logs that as research and tests whether people are truly intuitive in terms of like feeling somebody staring at you or feeling somebody calling you. Same way dogs can tell if their owners are on their way home. I mean, way before the owner shows up in the driveway, you probably have had this with your pet. So Rupert Sheldrake talks about that. He also talks about the human morphogenetic or morphogenic field, which again is a lot like Eileen McCusick's human biofield. He says that between two people or cultures or groups, there are these shells, and these shells overlap and create resonant points. These resonant points that, if you magnify, would look like cymatic patterns. If you've ever seen cymatics in a Chladni dish or Chladni plate, you'll see those. Okay, so you'll also see ferrocell magnetic field lines. So imagine a ferrocell coupled with this, and you get a three-dimensional cymatic resonance code. So this code is how people interact with one another. They resolve these nodes, these cymatic harmonies or disharmonies with one another. This is how people vibe, jive. They don't jive with people based on dissolution in these harmonies, or that's not really the right way to put it, but dissonance in these harmonies rather. This is the same way you see ripples in a pond emanate from a center point and then overlap, and you'll get these kind of, they're called interference patterns. But I think at every node, you get these kind of cymatic resonant dense points that you can read. So Rupert Sheldrake, Eileen McKusick. Let's talk about, who else we got? We got Donald Scott talks about the electric star model. He explains how the flow of current works when it comes to moving energy through a Birkeland filament, and how along all of these structures you have counter-rotating currents. This is why you have bands on Jupiter, and that's why you have a hexagon on Saturn. And that's how you have the aurora on Earth, and weather systems that cater to basically counter-rotation due to the twisting of a coaxial Birkeland filament. But you also have the hypertrochoid, and you also have the toroidal shape here again. Side-by-side hexagons, geometries making sense. You got emanating Fibonacci spirals that are the tetrahedrons. So Don Scott, Rupert Sheldrake, Eileen McKusick. Who else can we talk about? Dr. Pierre-Marie Robitaille talks about the sun having a hexagonal lattice. That's not a that's not a hexagon. This is a hexagon. Trying to sketch with a mouse. But anyway, he says that the sun is actually liquid metallic hydrogen, and the surface of the sun are convection currents that follow the order of a crystal lattice, as opposed to random energies, which is what we postulate right now. They're like, well, follow a laminar flow, but really the sun has a surface. It has a crystal lattice, liquid metallic hydrogen surface. And Dr. Pierre-Marie Robitaille, or Sky Scholar, has proven this. He has also talked about Kirchhoff's laws, and he's also talked about the cosmic microwave background radiation and how flawed the science is there. So really important to listen to Sky Scholar, even if you disagree with him. So Sky Scholar, Pierre-Marie Robitaille, Donald Scott from Thunderbolts Project, Rupert Sheldrake from himself, and Eileen McKusick. Who else could we add to it? We could add Gerald Pollack, Jerry Tennant, Jerry Tennant, who talks about the electric cells and easy water, and how easy water and electric cells really is how the human body works. Again, they get into hexagons, lattices, trading ions, shells. So Jerry Tennant and Gerald Pollack. And who else? And of course, Ken Wheeler, Theoria Apophatic. Ken, in between all his other videos, talks about light circuits, talks about gravity, mutual mass acceleration, point source energy, and all sorts of different things that I learned from Uncle Kenny. But you gotta get through the forest with Uncle Kenny. Eric Dollard, and on and on and on. But that would be a great place to start kind of talking to these people. Go to their channels and give them a like. Listen to Eileen McKusick talk about it, and see, and why doesn't Rupert Sheldrake talk to Eileen McKusick? And why doesn't well, I know why the big science channels won't touch this, but yeah, I know exactly why they won't touch it. What's up, Fantasy Ecstasy? All right, let's go Orion Neb. Yeah, this is actually the video shot, but a little, 5-10 minutes ago, I had a very nice single capture, a long exposure of it. Yeah, everybody's here tonight. I hope everybody's having an excellent holiday and had a good Christmas, etc. That's a lot of information for y'all, but please ask me specifically about this stuff, and I'm happy to talk about it. And please give those people a follow. They're very easy to find, and this is the true new face of science, this kind of the amalgamation of these brilliant, provable concepts that include things like telepathy and and information and memory being outside the human body, and light to not have kind of a limit on it, to be more of a variable expression of reality. There's so many things to derive from just watching a little bit of that, and then coming back here and then watching a sketch. You know, sketching the stuff on top of the moon is just as like enjoyable for me as it is to share it with you, because it's so easy. I gotta say, ultimately, if you know how to do it, nature is so gracious with its connections, where just give you know, I feel just this little bit of the torus and the hyperboloid geometry, the hourglass, and then the shells gives you so much power from so little, and that's why it feels so right. That's why Electric Universe like really hits home for me. I appreciate you all so much for listening to me rant and ramble about this stuff. I know it could sound all kooky, but I know everybody's got their version of it. But yeah, looking at this nebula right here, you can sense that like there's something really off about our contemporary pop cosmology, where we're 30 people here, 30 some odd people, actually connecting with space, and then millions of others connecting with an illusion of space, a story of space versus actual space, right side by side. Cool. Pulling up a song here. I'm gonna take us out so I can go grab some dinner. I've worked up quite an appetite talking tonight. Felt really energized to share this information with y'all. This is the legacy stuff that we need to leave for our kids, just so that there's somebody saying that like, hey, like, yeah, all this stuff, but this. Just like Velikovsky let us in on a secret, just like Tesla left us stuff to pick up. There's really no other reason except to experience it. And stay funky, of course. Gonna wrap it up here, let Orion drift off screen, and I will try and be on later, but I don't think I'm gonna set up on the back porch again tonight. I'm just gonna leave everything here for tomorrow, and Yeah, I'll do Prism Dagger, take us out. That's a good one. And maybe I'll try and get us a glimpse of Sirius. It's just coming up over the tree line for the last shot here. But I'm just going to let the sky drift. And shout outs to all of y'all. Patrick McNellis, NGC, great to see you. Hans Koenig, Wild Vicky, Mary Quite, Fantasy Ecstasy, Ayad Hassan, Genghis Khan, Howie Dunn, Donald Yates, Illa Tiki, Ellie Wynn, of course, and Wingsley, and other cats. I'm sorry I don't know the rest of their names. Haunted House, and who else we got? I see Richard Garcia was here, and Astralis, Sonic Jet, and that's all I got. If I missed you, I still appreciate you. If you thumbs down this video, I still appreciate you. You're all necessary. And I'll catch you all tomorrow or the day after. Faux show. Have a great rest of your night. Have a great Sunday, moon night, and treat somebody kindly by sharing this video with them. And also, finally, quickly, just shameless promotion because y'all asked for it. Go download and or share this will-powered track with your friends and loved ones. Prism Dagger coming up, and I'll catch y'all on the flip, everybody. Bonne nuit.
Shine through the prison, dagger, sharing my love. Tell me